Good afternoon, everybody. We are, according to my computer, it's 1:05, which is the listed start time for today's committee of the whole meeting. So are you all set on your end, Claire?
Yes, we are live streaming and ready to go.
Fabulous. All right. Well, great. Thanks so much, everybody. I am filling in for Jordan, who's filling in for Gwen. So we're working our way down here for today's committee of the whole agenda. We continue to still meet virtually, but we hope people continue to still engage with us through a variety of means. And the best way to find all of that, Claire's going to put some information up on the screen, but is to visit the city's website at www.ci.missoula.mt.us/webcasts. That is central location for how you can comment on upcoming agenda items, join upcoming committee meetings. We are meeting all virtual on Wednesday and in a hybrid format on Monday. And then we continue to live stream on YouTube and cable spectrum channel 190. And you can also email council at ci.missoula.mt.us, as well as leave us all a voicemail at 406-552-6012, and that gets sent out to all members of council. And then on here is the variety of ways to participate if you're joining us today for our committee of the whole meeting. So with that, I will turn it over to Claire to do roll call. I do believe that we are at a quorum level. Yes. So Claire, if you wouldn't mind doing a roll call.
Absolutely. So Stacy Anderson.
I am present.
Mirta Becerra. Absent. Daniel Carlino.
Present.
John Contos.
Here.
Jordan Hess is absent. Gwen Jones is also absent. Kristen Jordan.
She said she'd be in and out today, so I don't see her.
Mike Nugent.
Present.
Jennifer Savage.
Present.
Amber Sherrill.
Present.
Sandra Vasica.
Present.
Heidi West.
Present.
All right.
And that that ding was Mirta joining us. So she
I will go back.
All right. Great. Thanks, everybody. We do have approval of minutes from our last committee of the whole meeting, which was April 6th. Does anybody have any additions, comments for those? If not, they will stand approved. Don't see any. So minutes from our previous meeting will stand approved. We have two agenda items, and but before we get into those, we will open it up for public comment on non-agenda items, but for things under the purview of the committee of the whole, which is pretty broad. So we see we have two members of the public, but I'm not sure if they're here for our items on the agenda or just here as general public. So we'll give them a moment to raise their hands. Okay, great. Well, it looks like they're here to comment on the agenda item. So we have two agenda items today, and we will start with the first one, which is a contract for the Scott Street Community Land Trust loan. And presenting this item is John Adams. And I'll turn it over to you. Thanks, John.
Pleasure. Yeah, my name is John Adams. I'm the City Strategic Projects Administrator. I hope you can see a slide. Is that correct? People seeing a slide?
Yes, we are.
Sweet. What we've brought for your consideration today is a loan of just under $500,000 to begin the design of the community land trust portion of the Scott Street parcel development, which is to say the design of the permanently affordable income qualified portion of that development. This is a loan to Rivara Development, but it's important to understand that it's functionally a loan to ourselves, with Rivara acting as our pro bono construction manager. Let's see if I can advance. It's important also to understand that this project is a direct outgrowth of council approved city plans and policies. Our strategic plan calls for the city to redevelop underused and dilapidated properties in city ownership to meet our current and future housing needs. And the Scott Street parcel is certainly underused and dilapidated. And our city housing policy calls to expand affordable home ownership options via leveraging city land donations and profits created by housing development to catalyze a nonprofit-led mixed income development model that will create a significant number of new, deeply subsidized home ownership opportunities, while also significantly adding to the moderately priced market rate housing stock. This project does exactly that. And it's also in consonance with both council and the Missoula Redevelopment Agency's desire to support the development of housing and affordable housing via tax increment financing, without which the project would just not exist. So to go back in time to 2020, a time we all remember fondly, I think. The city used tax increment financing to purchase the Scott Street parcel on the north side, just west of Scott Street. So I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this is Scott Street where it heads across the tracks to the north side. The parcel in blue is was formerly Scott Street Limited Liability Partnerships parcel, the Scott Street parcel. It's about 19 acres. And the Scott Street parcel was formerly part of the White Pine Sash facility, which was and remains a state Superfund site. Cleanup on the western portion of the property, which you can see here, was to commercial industrial levels. Cleanup of surface soil on the eastern portion of the property was to residential levels. So the city purchased it with the intent of utilizing the west half to consolidate public works and mobilities operations on the north side, so that we could free up other city land that Public Works uses currently for housing, and then to utilize the eastern half of the property for neighborhood appropriate housing consistent with our housing policy. In 2021, council approved a letter of intent between Rivara and the city. Essentially, this is a partnership with Rivara to do all the things that we set out to do on the eastern half of that parcel. And the heart of the letter of intent was that we would purchase, Rivara would purchase 6 acres from the city to construct market rate multifamily workforce housing. Rivara has done substantial work toward the design of that development, and the Missoula Redevelopment Agency is preparing to complete infrastructure on the parcel to connect it to the neighborhood and enable residential development. And at the same time, Rivara will serve as the master developer on our behalf for the remaining 3 acres of residential land, which the city will donate to a community land trust. So conceptually, this will look something like this, where the top third of the roughly 9 acres on the east half of the Scott Street parcel will be privately owned homes, part of the community land trust, townhomes, and condominiums. And then the southern 2/3 of the parcel will be multifamily workforce housing. So to get to the CLT piece, and Ms. West, I will rely on you to correct any misstatements I make about community land trusts during this presentation. But basically, we have 3 parties that are working closely together in order to get to this pretty rare outcome. The city donates land and provides a pre-construction loan and also builds the infrastructure in the parcel. Rivara donates its time and development expertise, a ton of time, to serve as master developer. They do not make any money off of that. They don't even pay themselves out of it. And the North Missoula Community Development Corporation donates their expertise and then administers the land trust in perpetuity. The end result with the 3 parties coming together is permanently affordable, income qualified housing. So just to say a little bit more about the parties, the North Missoula Community Development Corporation is a longtime institution here in Missoula on the north and west side. This is part of their, I cribbed this directly from their website. They serve as a land trust in the 3 neighborhoods that they serve. Here, Ms. West, I rely on you, but a community land trust is a nonprofit organization that holds land in trust for a community in order to provide lasting assets and shared equity homeownership opportunities for everyday neighbors. At heart, the land trust owns the land, whereas homeowners own their homes on top and lease the land below their houses. And so essentially, the land trust buys down the cost of housing for the homeowners by providing the land rent-free. And then in turn, in this case, the city will provide that land donation to NMCDC, the Community Land Trust. It's a model that enables particularly first-time homeowners of limited means to get into the housing market and begin to build equity and own their own homes and enjoy all the benefits thereof. But the CLTs, the Community Land Trust, typically, and in this case would, administer the homes with restrictions on resale so that they remain permanently affordable. In other words, the first buyer can't simply acquire a house and then flip it. Second partner, third, along with the city and NMCDC, is Rivara Development, which is affiliated. It's a mission-oriented private company affiliated with Good Works Ventures and the High Stakes Foundation. So Rivara serves as the master developer for the entire 9 parcels per our letter of intent, developing the market rate housing on the southern portion and serving as the master developer to help us get the CLT piece built as well. So again, 3 parties without any of which the whole thing would not hold together. So this is a slide which serves both as hopefully something useful and also an argument for new graphic design staff for the city. In essence, we are continuing to develop master agreements with Rivara that govern the entire parcel and the entire development. The city will donate the land to NMCDC. NMCDC will lease the land to Rivara. Rivara will construct the CLT units using a commercial construction loan and also this city soft cost loan to get everything started. As units are sold, they go into the CLT, and the proceeds for the first few phases, for the first 50% of houses, simply get reused to construct the subsequent units. At the 51st percentile unit, the proceeds begin pro rata to repay the city soft cost loan and the commercial construction loan. In terms of the loan, the loan is $479,435. It's for design and other soft costs. Interest is 1.5%. Security is the design and any other work product. The repayment is essentially what I just outlined, that once you get to the 51st percentile unit, you start to repay the soft cost construction loan, and presumably will also be subordinate to the main construction loan. And it's just important to remind you that this is essentially a loan to ourselves. Rivara acts as the construction manager, but this is functionally us giving ourselves the ability to do this. And the yield in the end should be approximately, we haven't done design yet, so it's early days, but approximately 78 units, condominiums and townhomes, ranging from studios to 4 bedrooms. Some of those will be market rate, and the proceeds from those will subsidize the other units and enable the whole thing to work. The majority will be sold at below market affordable prices. Purchasers will be income qualified. That's one role that NMCDC will play, will be to ensure that people who simply can't afford market rate homes will get in here. They can have an income of no greater than 120% of area median income. And then again, essentially it allows people to get equity, begin to build equity, own their own home, but there are restrictions on resale downstream, which Ms. West could probably explain better than me, but to ensure that the homes remain permanently affordable. That, in a nutshell, is the deal. Dale Bickle, presumably Lee Griffin are here, and we're all ready to help answer any questions you have.
Great. Thanks so much for that presentation. Really exciting movement on this project, and I know we're all, these houses are needed as of yesterday. So we'll take a couple questions from council members who are queuing up. I have Miss Cheryl first.
Yeah, thanks. And maybe Heidi will end up answering some of the questions that I have. But first of all, John, I want to say I actually, when I first saw that graph come up, I kind of laughed to myself because it looked so complicated, but it's really good. I mean, how you walked us through it was great. I understand it better after you walking us through that than I had before. So it's a good graph, even if it's daunting to look at. I'm hoping, and I've discussed this with Heidi, so maybe Heidi wants to answer it, or John, but will you speak about when I first heard that 120% of AMI as a benchmark, it kind of threw me, not being in the housing world, to say, isn't that too high? Will you guys speak to that a little bit? I'm really excited about this project, so I don't want to focus too much on that, but I think sometimes that number gets misconstrued for what it really is. So I don't know who wants to talk about it.
Dale or Heidi, I'd defer to you. You are more knowledgeable about the housing programs than I am, but at heart, 120 is the maximum. Well, folks at 120% AMI struggle to afford housing in Missoula, and so it's a benchmark. Well, Heidi, why don't Ms. West, I'll defer to you.
Well, and I just want to say that Bob Oakes is also in attendance, so it probably would be appropriate to call on him to answer some of these questions as well, since he represents the NMCDC in this context. But I briefly spoke with Dale about this on Monday, I think it was, and I think the 120% AMI terminology is a little bit alienating, I suppose, because it sounds like if you earn 100%, you should be able to afford things in Missoula, and the reality isn't that way. And that it probably, for these conversations, would be useful to actually maybe refer to what that number is in our community. And I don't have it pulled up right now, but there is a huge gap between what was between what people earn and what they can afford. And our gap is much higher than 120%. So I'll just leave it there. And I think maybe we could add, before we get to Monday night, maybe add the number of what that actually is. Just, I think it's easier for people to understand in the context of housing prices.
Great, thanks so much. And I agree. I mean, it's also up to 100%, 120%. So there's everybody who falls below that are also in here, and it depends on family size. So it would probably, it's not just a set number, it's how big your family is. So I do see that Mr. Oakes is in the meeting, and he does have his hand raised, so he may have some commentary on this particular question. So happy to allow you to speak.
Yeah, hi, everybody. And Brittany Palmer is here with me as well, and she's the manager of our land stewardship program, our community land trust. So the 120% figure really represents, approaches what's happening with our market right now, and it really doesn't even meet the costs. People who make up to 120%, households that make up to 120% don't even come close to affording the houses that are on the market right now. And what we have done, our community land trust homes, we've developed 54 over the last 20 years, and we steward them. But those homes all had HUD money involved, and that means that households had to be under 80% of area median income. And this up to 120%, we hope to get we hope that the developers are able to bring homes in for households that are from 80 to 120%, or the missing middle that we always hear talked about. Does that help?
It does. Thanks so much for that additional context. Okay, so continuing on our queue, we, Ms. West, you had your hand up next. I know you were called on to answer, but let you go.
I have a handful of questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So my first one is, looks like the repayment period ends in like, I moved away from that window, 2024. And I was wondering if 2025 to 2026 is what it says. And I was wondering if you had a number basically on what the interest on this loan would contribute to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund over, if that is when the loan gets repaid. Do you know what that is? And you can get it to me later. It doesn't have to be right now.
I haven't done that math, but it's nominal. It's we're charging ourselves interest functionally, so it's not super important. We're trying to hold a little ground against inflation, but that's about it. And I should mention that the repayment period is simply an estimate. It'll be dependent on when the units actually sell. So that was merely my guess at when we would have units completely out the door, and it may be off target.
Okay. And I think maybe that's a useful thing to add. We're meeting tonight with the Affordable Housing Oversight Committee, and I think it would be a useful just to show the difference between grants and loans that are being originated from that funding source. So my second question is, I'm a little, and I know you said what was securing the loan, but I'm a little bit confused, or, how substantively, if everything were to fall apart, and it won't, but what is the actual thing we would collect on? How would we recoup the $500,000?
Yeah, it's a reasonable question. And the reality is that there is some risk attached to the project. And the security is essentially the work product that we'll have obtained with that money that Rivara will have commissioned. So the design for the development, the design of the units, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea is that if everything went to H, we could pick up, that there would be a way to pick up and move on. But Rivara is doing this for us. We can't hold Rivara responsible and attempt to extract some kind of lien on them to do our work for us. And since we own the land, we can't pull the land back either. So there's not a beyond kind of the work product that the loan will pay for. There's no obvious other means to security. So we hope that this is adequate.
Thank you. And I have two more questions. And my next question is about the actual agreement we have on the Scott Street, on this parcel. And it is not my understanding that it would currently allow market rate units within the community land trust portion. So are we revisiting that agreement? Is there a point at which we will know more, and will we amend it? What's the path forward if that's how we're going to structure this?
You're asking if you're suggesting that the letter of intent only permits.
Yeah, I was under the impression that it was affordable housing exclusively, and there wasn't, it wasn't explicitly spelled out that market rate units would be permitted, but I could be wrong.
I'm going to let Dale jump in if he knows the answer. I'd have to revisit the LOI to be sure that it doesn't commit those to determine whether it commits to community land trust or if it commits to only affordable housing. Dale, if you're online, do you know the answer to this question?
Yeah, Heidi, I think you're right. I think the intent when council entered into the letter of the intent of council and the letter of intent is that that it was that all units in the CLT would be 120%. And what we are, we are in a kind of an unprecedented construction inflation environment, and making this work. We have a number of tools to employ to be able to try to do this. Our team met recently to kind of workshop ideas, and one of those ideas is to come back to council with an idea of a different mix of units to be able to market rate in order to maintain some affordable units. There's all the other tools we have. One, just increased subsidy from some source. Is there opportunities to redesign and change the mix and all those things? But the answer is probably all of the above. And we'll just need to keep workshopping that. Right now we're working from, some informed estimates, but without our architects on board, we really don't, we're at a disadvantage on really true cost. So that's what this first step allows us to do, is to get some better design and a lot better estimates.
And I guess my final question is, first of all, that this presentation can be uploaded to Sire. I think I feel like I need to look at some of those flow charts in a little bit more detail, and they're complex. And I guess my last, without having more context of the actual development numbers, I think I feel a little bit nervous about the repayment after 50% of the units have been, I think that's how you described it, 51% of the units have been sold, since it sounds like early home sales are going to be financing later home sales. And then after that, we're putting ourselves into at least third position, it sounds like, to recoup this investment, because we're also going to be standing behind the construction loan. And my only development experience with a community, with a community land trust project had free land, and 50% of the construction cost was subsidized. And which means that there's actually very little money available for anything other than repaying the construction loan. And so I would love to see just a little bit more detail on that repayment plan to ensure that there is enough, I guess, equity in the project, that it repays the original loan amount and the interest, as well as the future, the construction loan. And we're way down on getting repaid. So I don't know I don't think it's, the information is there at the moment, but I would love to see a little bit more detail if it is there. So I think that's my final comment / question.
Thanks so much for that, Ms. West. I don't know, Mr. Adams, if you are want to take a stab at some of those, or.
I'm going to defer to Dale. He's got his hand up.
Okay, Mr. Bickle.
Yeah, I think we can provide some additional detail related to those numbers. What I want to say is that the city is in the position of really being the developer, so we are at risk. So really, what the equity components from a developer standpoint is on this project would be today is the value of the 3-acre land itself. It is the proceeds from the sale of the 6-acre parcel that we would be using as equity in the construction loan, and also the value of this loan. That really today, that is the equity in the project. It's all city. The hope is that we are able to construct this project with construction financing, to get, we're at about 25%. And so we think we're working with financial institution to get, to provide the rest of that. This is it's about a $23 million project to do all of that. And we're hoping that this is all going to work out, but but being in the developer shoes here means that the city is at risk related to those portions.
Thank you, Mr. Bickle. Next up in the queue, I have Ms. Savage.
Thank you. I just wondered, John, if you could walk me back through the original size of the parcel, and then the number of acres that are involved in this particular project.
Yeah, the original size of the Scott Street parcel as a whole was about 19 acres. And then you cut that roughly in half, east and west, to get to the residential east half and the commercial industrial west half. And then you take that roughly 9 acres on the east half and you devote 2/3 to the market rate for Rivara development and 1/3 to the community land trust development. So about that's how you end up at roughly 3 acres of CLT development, 6 acres of market rate development. And then the balance is still held in reserve for public works and mobility or whatever else the city may end up determining is the best use of that area.
I have a follow-up, Ms. Anderson.
That's fine.
And so there aren't any current plans for that sort of industrial use piece at this moment?
Well, they're a little bit up in the air because Public Works is continuing to, so Public Works has developed a master plan and they're trying to identify the best way to get the space that they need for operations now and for a reasonable time horizon. And so one easy way to get that is to use the west half, but they want to make sure that they're considering all their options and that is in fact the very best option. The land right now is encumbered by a land treatment unit, and so we can't do anything on it in the immediate couple years, probably until DEQ and HUDIG, the responsible party, clear out that land treatment unit. Once that happens, all options are on the table. We briefly discussed potentially Mountain Line being there, but it doesn't fit with their time horizon to develop a new headquarters. It's possible that we could think about cleaning it up and it could be housing, but Public Works is, I would say, the most likely, but not certain option right now.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Mr. Bickle, did you want to weigh in on that?
I would, thank you. When we originally acquired this parcel, just to add a little bit more context, that western half, that 9 acres, that's where the LTU is that John referenced. The original plan was that would be the new public, would help consolidate Public Works. But what we were trying to do is there is land north of Rogers Street where we currently stockpile materials for Public Works. That site in the Scott Street master plan is actually earmarked for housing, and so that's what part of this original acquisition was. All right, we can develop this front half for housing in accordance with the master plan. This back half was staying industrial, but we can move Public Works there and then free up that other land available for housing. So that's how we were moving forward with the implementation of that master plan. Now we are considering whether we're evaluating the Public Works facilities plan in order to see do they need all of that part of it, or are there other alternatives? And so that's where that is, but that was the original intent, was Public Works.
Thanks for that additional context, Mr. Bickle. It's good to have options. Mr. Nugent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I really am excited about this project, and I commend the creativity everyone's welcome to have. I think that with the housing crisis that we're in, finding solutions like this and trying to make them work is really important. And I think we have to be willing to walk without a net a little bit. So I definitely understand the need to approve the loan for design so we can really get better numbers and figure out what we're doing. And that makes sense. I wanted to speak quickly to the question earlier on AMI. I just found the Realtors Housing Affordability Index, and I know there are other places to get this information as well. But for 2021, the median family income needed to afford the median home in Missoula with 5% down was $123,588. So it looks like if these numbers are accurate, the median family income in 2021 was $70,900. That seems a little bit low to me, but that would put 120% at 85,000, give or take, which is still well below being able to afford the median family home. So just for some context on kind of where that 120 comes in, and wanted to get that out there. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Mr. Oakes, I see you have your hand raised. Did you want to comment on the?
Yeah, Brittany's here with the numbers for household size, in case you'd like to hear them.
I can just share real quick that like the average household size who have taken Homewards first time home buyer class was like 2 to 3 people. And at 120%, a 2-person household, the limit is 72,000. 3 is 81,000, and 4, a family of 4 at 120% AMI is 90,000. And I rounded those a little bit, but I think even at that family of 4, that is approaching a household that looks like, 2 teachers with 2 kids who may be able to get into a home ownership opportunity for the first time. So just wanted to share those numbers real quick.
Great. Thanks so much for those numbers. Really appreciate it. And I agree with Heidi. I think it's good to have those. It puts a little bit more context into things. Mrs. Sika.
Thanks. So I'm a little bit concerned. I was wondering, so we're lending out the money at a 1.5% interest rate, but inflation's at 8.5%. So we're essentially going to be losing money on this. Is that right?
Yeah, functionally. I mean, it's our own money. There's but there's going to be some attrition. Yeah, we're not going to there isn't going to be room to recoup everything, charge ourselves. There's just not space there. Good luck.
Thanks. I appreciate the answer.
Great. And I would also note, I mean, most loans right now are not tied. I mean, there is inflation, but you can get a commercial or a conventional loan for less than 8% still for a mortgage loan. So it's not exactly tied. It's a factor, but Miss West.
So I just have a general comment, and I guess I think this speaks to the importance of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I don't think that there is a private commercial funding source that would take on this level of risk, because as a government entity with public funds, we are assuming, I think, an incredible amount of risk, but also I think have the ability to see it through. And I do think that my best guess would be that this wouldn't be the only amount of subsidy, in addition to the land, even that's required to actually make these affordable to the end user. So whether that is additional subsidy through down payment assistance, or, I imagine it's going to take a bit more interventions to actually make these affordable to even 120% AMI, which I guess my one concern would be that this project over the next, I don't even know, 5-6 years will take a disproportionate amount of funding from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And again, it's already in a part of town that is serving, I guess, having a disproportionate amount of affordable housing constructed here, and it isn't necessarily spreading that out through the rest of the community, if that comment makes sense. But I support this project and this particular ask, but I want to put it in that context.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Ms. West. I agree that, I mean, if it wasn't for some innovative tools that we have here in Missoula, like the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and MRA, none of this would be happening.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not without, it is not, there's risk involved in it. But I think that, we are trying to use creative tools in our toolbox to step up and address a crisis level need in our community. So, but I appreciate all of your expertise on this. Mr. Carlino.
I just wanted to go ahead and make the recommended motion, and could I speak to it?
You may.
Yeah, I think this is an excellent use of tax increment financing funds, and the fact that this is going to secure affordable units in perpetuity is exactly what we need right now in Missoula. So happy to support this affordable housing project.
Great. thanks for making the motion. It's in order, is on the floor. Do we have any public comment? Okay, Mr. Adams. Not public comment, but comment in general.
I just wanted to clarify that while the project is enabled by tax increment financing in other respects, such as the infrastructure, and while it's possible that probably even that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund will contribute to the project, that this initial loan doesn't come from either of those sources. This is a general treasury, city treasury loan that's essentially enabled by ARPA and other. Well, I'll let Dale address that if he wants to, but just to clarify that the immediate source for the soft cost loan is neither MRA nor the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We're pulling that out of the city treasury.
Great. Thanks so much. I appreciate that additional context. I guess I should have been clear that the purchase of the land was allowed by MRA, and the continued investments through Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Those are tools to address the larger project, not to mislead folks on this particular $479,000 loan. Ms. Cheryl.
Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate that clarification, John. I just want to kind of point out, I'm in support of this as well. And because Daniel brought that up, I want to point out, you know, that this project, not exactly what we're talking about today, is just a great example of the things that you can do when you invest in economic development and in these urban renewal districts, because we build it up through economic development. We have TIF funds in there, and then we get to spend them in ways like this. You have to invest to get that investment back. And I just think that this is going to be a great example of that. And even with that, with our housing crisis, as Heidi pointed out, we may need other forms to keep it affordable. So, and to get those people into homes. So I want to celebrate that right now, because we do hear some misinformation around tax increment financing. And this is exactly why you invest in economic development, to support your community after you have built that fund up.
Thanks so much. I have done a terrible job of managing our time here on this. We still have one more agenda item and 3 minutes left in committee. So Ms. Vasika, I will give you the final word quickly.
Thank you. So I am not going to be in support of this motion. I spoke with Heather Harp about this project a lot, and she did convince me of a lot of things why this is good. I'm really uncomfortable with the inflation rate and the interest rate that we're getting on this loan. So I'm just not going to support it.
Okay, with that, we will take a roll call vote. Claire, if you could help with that real quick.
Absolutely. Let's start with Mike Nugent.
Yes.
Jennifer Savage.
Yes.
Amber Sherrill.
Yes.
Sandra Vasika.
No.
Heidi West.
Sorry, muted. Yes.
Stacy Anderson.
Yes.
Mirta Becerra.
Yes.
Daniel Carlino.
Yes.
And John Contos.
Yes.
All right, that passes with 8 yeses and 1 no.
Okay, that will be on committee reports then on Monday. So it was not unanimous. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Adams and Mr. Oakes, for joining us. And there was a +1 with in that other well. Okay, so quickly, we have the second agenda item is from Emily Harris Shears, which is a referral for funding out of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So we will quickly turn that over to her. I am running the next committee, so we will go a little bit over into public safety and health, but not too much longer, because of we do have interviews scheduled in that committee as well. So Emily, are you here?
I'm here.
Great. And is this a time set? Like, do we have to get this funding approved today?
Yes.
Okay, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I will be as quick as possible. I think since I just saw you last week, you know who I am, but I'm Emily Harris Shears. I'm the Housing Policy Specialist with Community Planning, Development, and Innovation. And today I'm bringing a funding recommendation from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund from our unified application round. Oops. And just a quick background on the Community Development Fund's unified application round. We used a standard application process for 3 funding sources, which included the HUD Home Investment Partnership, or as we call HOME, HUD CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grant, and the Affordable Housing Trust Funds. So applicants were able to select the funding that they were seeking and then do 1 application rather than having to do 3. And so they could ask for multiple funding sources in 1 application. Eligible applicants included nonprofit and for-profit organizations, and new and in-process projects are eligible. And from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, we can make grants and loans. And so I'm just going to give a quick note on the funding recommendation timing. So we have 1 project that I'm bringing today that has an upcoming acquisition timeline, and so they need their contract to start before the others. And then the remaining 3 recommendations for funding from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund will be shared in May when we come back with all of the other funding recommendations from both Home and Community Development Block Grant. So we've based the unified application and the values that expressed in A Place to Call Home, the housing policy of diversity, innovation, collaboration, and achievability. We built our rubrics around that, and we built our application materials around that. So for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, we had $1,046,200 available to award. We received a total of 6 projects that were eligible to receive trust fund dollars. And the total, we were oversubscribed by about $371,000. This is just a timeline that we opened the application process. We posted the materials in late December, and then pre-applications were due in late January, and final applications were due in late February. And then the scoring committee met in March, and now we're here. So our scoring process is standardized. We use a scoring criteria rubric that all applicants receive at the time that they get the materials. And we focus on the project design, the demonstrated knowledge of community need, impact and outcomes, financial feasibility, timeliness and readiness, and then staff score the match commitment that they have at the time of application. That means how much of a matching amount of money are they bringing into the project. We require a minimum of 25%. And then the completeness of the application, that includes both timeliness of materials and then also whether we have to go back to applicants to ask for attachments and things like that. And then we had 3 bonus categories this round that collectively as a staff we scored, but the full scoring committee did not score these, and those were preventing displacement, innovation, and the funding request type. So if an applicant requested a loan, they received an additional set of bonus points. And our scoring committee was 8 staff, including Councilmember Becerra and Councilmember Jordan, and then 6 staff from Community Planning, Development, and Innovation. So the first funding recommendation that we're bringing today is to fund Habitat for Humanity $190,000 for the acquisition and placement of 2 modular homes on a parcel of land that they own in East Missoula, which is within our jurisdiction of, we use the jurisdiction that the health department uses of the city and then 5-mile radius within the county. So this project is eligible within that. And the project, the reasons that it was elevated for funding is that it leverages community partnerships and resources. It prevents housing displacement for 2 households with incomes under 80% area median income. And there's a readiness and ability to implement this quickly, as evidenced by needing to bring this to people before the rest of our projects. So the recommended motion is on the screen, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Ms. Shear, for that. And I guess my quick question right off the bat is the timeline for these projects given to the applicants as a part of their applicate, when applications are considered and when they're applying, do they know the timeline for funding and requests and things like that?
They do. So they receive the timeline that I shared with you all. In their application materials, we also do a funding workshop. And between the time of the pre-application and the final application, we offer technical assistance. Because our goal is to get as many strong projects into the pipeline as possible.
Great. Well, I have no doubt staff works really hard on this. I guess I'm just a little concerned. It's extra time on your and ours part to do these in one-offs. And if they knew the timeline ahead of time, the hope would have been able that they would have come together as a whole package so that we could really sort of look at them holistically as compared to others. And I know that this is not the first time we've seen this project. This is the second time we've seen this project. And I guess since I am chair, I'll ask one final other question. With what's the ownership component of this? So it's Habitat for Humanity owns this land. From my understanding, these trailers were purchased by Homeward. So in partnership, they are moving these to those. Is the people who will be housed on this, will they own the trailer and the land? And, because I know with trailers, there is, movability. I mean, I'm trying to think from down the road standpoint, will the applicants or the owners of this be able to move it? There's a depreciation that comes with trailers that stick built doesn't necessarily always have. So if you could address some of those very quickly, and then we'll go to Mr. Nugent.
Sure. Can I respond to one thing about the timeliness? So I think one of the realities of having projects that are both getting started and then also in process is that there will be at times an urgency from us. It will also be the reality of our reserve balance fund that projects will come that need a quick response. And we want to be as nimble and flexible to that as possible. They have a urgency to move these out of a storage facility that's city owned. And so that is part of why they're unable to move and wait until June or July when the contracts would start. They asked us to make this adjustment and we agreed to do that. So it wasn't a not understanding the timeline issue. It was really about an exception because of their project needs.
Thanks so much.
And then your second question was about
ownership of the
ownership. Yes, thank you. The ownership, so the owners will own the structure, and I am not quite sure about the land whether they're doing a CLT model. I feel that they are, but I will need to check on that. This is it's a separate investment and separate project, but it goes along with another project that we're working on. So I just need to check on that and can get back to you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Nugent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Clarification question and then a follow-up. The referral says modular, but the questions earlier were talking about a trailer, which would be a manufactured. And that's the distinction for a lot of lending because modulars generally are stick-built offsite but meet building code. So are they modular homes or are they manufactured?
My understanding is that they're modular homes.
And the distinction
and they're the same homes. Excuse me, sorry to interrupt you.
Well, I was going to say the distinction would be the modular never had an axle. It came on a flatbed versus a pulled to.
That's my understanding, and part of the project is putting them on foundation. And I just want to name that these are the homes that were a part of the Montana Street Homes project, and their surplus of that project.
I'm excited to see them being put to use. I think this is a very another interesting project. Both things today have been interesting. My second question is, since the city is giving a grant for money that is going towards a housing that is outside the city limits, are we putting any conditions that they need to agree to not protest annexation or anything like that in the future? Or is that even a consideration?
That's not something that we've discussed at this point.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Mr. Nugent. Ms. West.
So this, I was involved in some of the conversations, or at least observed some of the conversations around the Montana street homes and some of the challenges in getting private financing for those. And I was curious, I guess, how does Habitat for Humanity finance those internally to their buyers? I don't know enough about them. Or do they have to find local lenders? And do you know if some of those conversations have been had already? Because if I remember correctly, these don't have the HUD certified label on them that denote them as a modular home, because they were created for commercial, a commercial use, I think, on a, I don't remember, mining camp or something. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. From my conversations with Heather, my expectation is that it's internal financing, but that would be something I could also confirm with her.
Okay, folks. So we do need a recommended motion. I do feel like there's some outstanding questions that would be lovely to have, but understanding some time frames on this. So Ms. West, you still have your hand up.
I was just going to make the recommended motion so we can move forward.
Great, thank you for doing that. Motions on the floor is in order. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote, but if Ms. Harris-Shears, if you wouldn't mind sending all of us a quick email before Monday night with some of these questions, we'd really appreciate it. And with that, Claire, could you please do a roll call?
Absolutely. Let's start with Jennifer Savage.
Yes.
Amber Sherrill.
Yes.
Sandra Vasika.
Yes.
Heidi West.
Yes.
Stacy Anderson.
Yes.
Mirta Becerra.
Yes.
Okay. Daniel Carlino.
Yes.
John Contos.
Yes.
And Mike Nugent.
Yes.
And that passes unanimously.
Great, thanks so much. I'll be on the consent agenda, but I know if there's any other additional questions, please email Ms. Harris-Shears beforehand and loop in Jordan and yes, Jordan, who would be in Gwen's absence. Okay, folks, so we are scheduled to start public safety and health at 2:05, and we have our first interview at 2:10. So if everyone could sort of just quickly move over to public safety and health, and we're going to try to start interviews as close to 2:10 as possible, and we'll do approval of the minutes and whatnot at the end of the agenda. And I know staff has to switch over, so it may be a little late, but we'll try to do that as quickly as possible. Thanks so much for your time and discussion today. With that, I will adjourn today's committee of the whole.